What's up, everybody? How's everyone doing? Welcome, welcome. Welcome back to the TCM Wednesday at 12 noon weekly stream. How's everyone doing today? Hope you're having a good week so far. Looks like we have Zen Carter as first. Welcome. Welcome to the stream. Good to see you again. Nil by Zero. What's up? I like your name. Hope you guys like that intro. If anyone can recognize what song that was, I was going to say I'll give you a prize, but I don't have a prize to give. But we do have some prizes to give this month, and maybe we'll talk about that later. But I'm curious if anyone recognized that little riff there. Hello, everybody. Fernando, welcome to the stream. Felix, doing well. I'm at work. Nice. Always nice to pop in for a stream in between some work projects. Am I right? Jose, welcome to the stream, my friend. Taking the SOC 101 course right now, almost finished. Nice. I hope you're enjoying it so far. That's awesome to see. Hope you enjoyed the course. And if you are ready for a follow-up to SOC 101, consider the SOC 201. We'll talk more about that today as well. Hey, Darkness. Welcome to the stream. Quite a few familiar faces, quite a few new faces. Always nice to see. Welcome, everybody. Beginner here. Linux, I think you're asking, should I prioritize learning Linux? Yeah, definitely. We're going to have probably a blog post come out, maybe today, actually, or at some point this week that talks about kind of like a repairing to the ethical hacker kind of guide that we put out every year, but one sort of on the defensive focused positions and job roles. And yeah, definitely Linux is one of those handy things that you want to pick up, at least have a good grasp of navigating through the operating system. A number of different utilities that can help you parse through files or artifacts and evidence. So it would always be a benefit to have some Linux, and I'd say PowerShell knowledge as well, even no matter what role you're going down or what path. Just always part of that, really having a really strong foundation of multiple operating systems. Hey, congrats. Took and passed the SOC 101 PSAA. Can't wait to see how the 201 exam environment will be. That's awesome to hear, my friend. Congratulations. Yeah, we're going to talk about the PSAP and that exam and what it consists of today. Go into a bit of detail and what that environment looks like and sort of what's going to be tasked of you if you sit the PSAP exam. So that's awesome to hear. So, if you weren't aware, last Friday we released the PSAP certification at TCM Security, which is sort of the intermediate level incident response threat hunting examination pairing to the SOC 201 course. And sort of the knowledge that gets built up in that course, along with all the prerequisites, right? So sort of SOC 101 is kind of a prerequisite to taking SOC 201. So again, all that sort of core foundation knowledge and also some of that more specialty threat hunting and IR. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. I have a few slides put together that will sort of talk about the exam and the course and whatnot. We also have some crazy Black Friday deals going on, and I'll talk more about that as well. But you should see a banner down here somewhere that gives you a link to all of that and a lot of information. And Britt's going to do a good job of putting all these links that we talk about today in the chat. There's a ton of different links. So, but yeah, we'll talk more about the Black Friday deals. There's some crazy cool stuff going on for the next few weeks at TCM. Hey, that's awesome to hear. Forex trader, welcome to the stream, my friend. Is the SOC 2-1 an immediate follow-up to SOC 101, or is there anything you would recommend I should do after finishing? Yeah, it's kind of an immediate follow-up, so it sort of directly builds on those core foundations from SOC 101, and just sort of deep dives into incident response and threat hunting, and doing so at scale. And so if you have that sort of foreknowledge going into it from the SOC 101, you'll be completely fine. That's also to say you don't need to take the SOC 101 to take the SOC 201, getting those names mixed up. But again, if you have sort of that prerequisite knowledge, if you maybe worked in a triage kind of analyst response role before, maybe like a tier one, or anything around that kind of security analysis, or if you just have those skills, from doing different labs and CTS on try hack me or hack the box and whatnot. There's no hard kind of prerequisite. If you don't take SOC 101, you're going to be lost. I don't think it's like that at all. But there is a little bit of assumed knowledge. Glaciality, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Yeah, yeah. The PSAP was a lot of work. We'll talk more about what went into building that exam in a little bit. But yeah, definitely, definitely scale wise a lot bigger than the PSAA. Can't wait to pass PSAP. Yes, I hope you do, my friend. I know you will. Alrighty, let me open this up while people are still joining in. So again, in case you missed it, last Friday we released that long-awaited PSAP certification. I've been getting a lot of DMs, or I have been, leading up to this, especially the SOC 201 course release. The second most common question I would get, sort of unsolicited, is, when is TCM going to come out with an intermediate certification for, again, that blue team kind of SOC 201 incident response, threat hunting kind of content? And so I don't really make the decisions on what courses or courses accompany an exam or certification, but fortunately in this case, I was able to work on a very fun and large-scale exam for the practical SOC analyst professional. And so again, the purpose of today's stream is to sort of just hang out, ask some questions, talk about the release. We can talk about SOC 201 if you want, and again, try to get to some of those frequently asked questions and give a nice overview on what you can expect. And if we have some time near the end, we'll do a very quick hunting kind of lab, not really a lab, but some demonstrations. I have a hard cutoff at 1 p.m. today, so we'll see what we can do. All right, so like I said, this is sort of the brief overview slide here of sort of what goes into the PSAP exam, and it's in the Academy, or the certifications TCM site if you want to take a closer look, but we'll sort of break it down here. It's sort of an easier kind of format to digest and make sure I don't miss anything. But essentially, again, it's that sort of intermediate level, I'd say, threat hunting and incident response exam experience. And so it's sort of assessing your ability to be able to proactively identify intrusions and importantly, reconstruct the attacker's activity through a sort of simulated intrusion. So you're going to be analyzing evidence, you're going to be looking into logs, different artifacts, host level artifacts, with ultimately the goal to sort of develop an actionable way to contain and eradicate and ultimately recover from this realistic compromise. And so really, it's centered on this idea of being able to hunt for and then trace an intrusion sort of at scale in a realistic enterprise environment. And so all the different investigation methodologies and techniques that we sort of learn in the SOC 201 course, leveraging different analysis tools, ultimately to investigate that intrusion and identify, what systems were affected, what users were affected, what data was potentially affected or contaminated or taken out of the environment, and collecting all of that supporting evidence in the form of artifacts and indicators. The idea is the main sort of deliverable here is that incident response report, right? Putting together a detailed and well-organized report that documents that investigation you performed, all the evidence, the affected systems, recommending response actions. So that's sort of at a high level what goes into it. And you'll have 3 days to complete the assessment. So, timeline or scale wise, a little bit longer than the PSAA, just because it is more involved. There are a lot more systems involved. There's a whole network, right? And an additional 2 days to put that report together. But I would always recommend you start writing your report while you're doing the investigation, because once that first 3 days is up, you no longer have access to the environment. It's just sort of time to perfect and put together that report. So make sure you have everything sort of documented and all the evidence collected and artifacts and whatnot. And I think that's more than enough time, as long as you sort of stick to the mission and don't fall down too many rabbit holes. But I'll give some more general tips later on as well. And so I obviously can't give too much away about the exam content, but I'll introduce some of the major players, since it's not really giving away details, but sort of setting the scenario here. And so the main idea is we're working with a organization called Avangate Industries, and they're a multinational kind of manufacturing logistics company that has a global IT infrastructure for their supply chains, production systems, sort of their day-to-day operations. So kind of a nice blank canvas here. But they've raised some concerns about being targeted, or different targeted activity from an adversary known as Fuzzy Koala. So that's sort of the APT, or the simulated threat group here, that's been reported to be conducting campaigns against organizations in the same kind of industry, right, or the same vertical here. And so what we're tasked with when we sit the exam here is to investigate whether this group has gained a foothold into our corporate network, and if they did, what else did they do? And so, as a sort of tier 3 security analyst here, you, or the royal you here, has been assigned to lead a threat hunting and incident response engagement. And so you're going to be provided with a rich, kind of diverse set of data sources, a lot more than you could ever probably want. And I can't give an exhaustive answer here, but we might be dealing with different endpoint data, network logs, host space artifacts, this sort of post-compromise triage collection data. And so, along with having a centralized log management system for us to use, we're going to have different triage evidence, host level artifacts, and you'll be met with different analyst workstations that you can use that have a range of different tools to help you transform and parse and correlate this data to sort of investigate the potential indicators that Fuzzy Koala has sort of impacted on the Avangate network. And so that's sort of the scenario we find ourselves in, right? It's very broad at the moment. We might have some suspicions of an intrusion, obviously, right? That's sort of the point of the exam here. But ultimately, we're not given too much to go off of. It's sort of up to you to go out into the environment and effectively hunt for evil. And if you do manage to find evil, how can you then retrace that attack and build up a timeline or a narrative around it so you can direct an appropriate response? We talk about, avoiding this whack-a-mole type scenario, and how important scoping is during intrusion analysis. And that really comes into play in this exam. You're given a lot of data, right? It's not so much the fact that you're missing data, and that's sort of the struggle. It's the opposite, right? Being able to uncover, malicious indicators through all that noise, all the affected accounts and systems and users and data that might have been interacted with. And so, again, here's our adversary, our APT group, Fuzzy Koala, and sort of going on that CrowdStrike kind of naming convention here. I thought was a nice little thing to add here. Should probably check if we have any pinned questions while I go through this. Cool. And so the idea here is we have this suspected state-sponsored threat group that's targeting different manufacturing and logistics organizations, right? And they're very opportunistic. They research and they probe their targets before kind of rapidly exploiting vulnerabilities if they can find any to gain access. Once they're inside, they move quickly to essentially do what I'd say 90% of APTs and adversaries do. They map the environment, identify those high value or those target systems or accounts, harvest credentials for privilege escalation, or to expand their influence in the environment while blending sort of their activity with legitimate administrative tools to avoid detection. And we take a good look at the different Mandy and M-Trends reports in the SOC 201 course. And we come to realize a lot of adversaries operate in similar ways once they're inside the network. And Fuzzy Koala, in this case, is no different. And so when it comes to the individual tactics and techniques that are involved in this campaign, I can't really tell you what those are, right? Even if I wanted to, I can't give sort of a one-size-fits-all answer for everyone that sits the exam. That's the idea here, right? We have to go out hunting for those indicators. And the rules of engagement that you're provided with when you take the exam is going to sort of give you a nice threat intelligence briefing that might be able to guide you down some different hunting leads. But ultimately, the idea here is that the current campaign that we're investigating is not super known to us. And so as threat hunters, we're the ones that are going to be making those dispositions. We're not just passively waiting around for alerts to come in, right? If you've taken the PSAP exam, you'd know that a lot of that is triaging security alerts, right? Different tickets or, however you want to describe them. In this case, we're not given alerts. We're not given indicators. That's up to us to hunt for in the environment. And so onto the more sort of meta exam details. We talked about this, but how do you actually pass the exam? Well, again, the main deliverable is going to be that incident response report. Everything kind of comes down to how you put together and structure a professional report for the client. We talked about the high-level objectives, but again, using different analysis tools and artifacts and investigation methodologies to reconstruct the intrusion and identify the attacker activity across the kill chain. Documenting your investigative process, identifying and describing different indicators of compromise that you've identified, performing an actual root cause analysis, right? So how can you explain how the intrusion succeeded at its source? Where did those defense controls or policies actually fail? So kind of going beyond the surface and actually trying to give that value add to the client on how this could perhaps be prevented in the future. And different containment, eradication, and recovery methods, right? How can we propose those to the client to actually, maybe perform a short-term containment and a long-term containment? Sort of these different recommendations to improve and recover from the incident. And so it can definitely seem intimidating here, right? There's a lot going on. There's a lot of moving parts. You're given multiple days to put together all your findings into a report and make sure that you include everything. Maybe you've never written an IR report before. You might be asking, what am I supposed to put in it, right? How do I word things? Don't worry too much about that. A report template is going to be provided when you sit the exam and receive the rules of engagement. If you've taken the SOC 101 or the PSAA, sort of how the report template was delivered to you. Kind of a nice, easy fill-in kind of format, right, with all the sections laid out and whatnot. And so similar in this case, only we're not triaging multiple tickets or alerts. In this case, we're the ones, again, hunting down and identifying the intrusion. And so you're free to use whatever template or report you want. But just know if you don't include, again, what's being asked of you in the exam, which is pretty clear in the ROE document, you might lose some valuable points. And so as best practice recommendation, I just say use the provided template. It has sort of everything you need and then some. Timeline, again, you'll have 3 days or 72 hours to actually complete the analysis. And then you'll have an additional 2 days or 48 hours to finish up and write and submit the exam report. TCM security is one of the best learning platforms. Nice. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And I agree. For the exam environment, all the analysis that you perform during the exam will sort of take place on the provided virtual machine. So it's all sort of in the cloud, all sort of web-based. And so you don't need to worry about having a local analysis lab or VM set up to take the exam. You just need to, again, if you've never taken a TCM exam before, you just need to configure a VPN file that will be given to you when you start the exam. And the rules of engagement has sort of all the documentation that you need to set that up as well. And then after that, everything is nice and easy. It's all web-based. Again, you don't need to worry about running virtual machines. You don't really need to worry about resources as long as you can, run a web browser. Any modern web browser will do. And so it's fortunately fairly simple to access in that case. Now, to actually prepare for the exam, just like every other TCM exam, everything you need to know is covered in the associated training. In this case, the SOC 201, which you released about a month ago now, just over a month ago. An important caveat, I think, is worth pointing out here is that the course doesn't contain the answers to the exam, right? And that kind of sounds obvious, but I think it's important to point out, the SOC 201 course especially is kind of designed to help you develop an investigative methodology, right? Sort of a way of thinking or approaching incidents or intrusions or problems that you can maybe apply in any different security operation context, right? So the different labs and exercises and examples, the idea is to sort of build up mental models on how to break down an intrusion at its source and identify what are the key indicators and follow the evidence wherever you need to go. And so rather than sort of focusing on memorizing specific techniques or tactics or even tools or command syntax or sim queries, the course is more so built around understanding why certain techniques work, right? Or how to adapt them in different situations you find yourselves in or different tools. The exact, data sets or scenarios or tools that you encounter in the course might not be one-to-one identical to what you see on the exam, right? There's sort of a foundation or a mental model that you can use there. Since this is an AMA, are you working on any Blue Team courses? Yeah, I think that's sort of where I'm at now. So now that we have the sort of PSAP released, next sort of big project is going to be another Blue Team related course. Don't know exactly what that's going to be. I would say it's probably more in the lines of something forensics based, whether that be again, I don't want people to quote me here, but maybe we might do a memory forensics course or something related to artifact acquisition and triage. We'll see where things go, but that is probably where we're headed. More of these not as grand or monolithic courses like SOC 101 and 201, more so focused and sort of applicable to maybe a specific area of blue teaming. PSA AE, probably eventually. I can't say for sure, but I would reckon something like that would more so be a compilation of different focused courses, right? So, if we have more specialized topics, that would sort of be bundled into whatever would become the PSAE. I don't think there will be a SOC 301 course. I think it'll more so be sort of a amalgamation of more sort of focused, advanced kind of topics. Oh, that's a good question. When will you be scheduling the next Sherlock session? Yeah, next time I stream, we'll do that. I wanted to make sure that we talk about the PSAP release, and also we'll talk about some of the Black Friday stuff going on at TCM, so more of a Q&A type stream. But the next time I'm on stream and I have some more time, I don't have a hard cutoff, we'll jump into some more Sherlocks. If I look at the calendar, I can't say for sure. I know Bellini will be streaming next week, so perhaps the 26th. We'll see where things go. I always forget what our streaming schedule is, and sometimes it changes. But yeah, for sure. I really want to dive into some more Sherlocks. Now, there's no shortage of tips that I could give for the exam here, but the idea is to really just focus on the fundamentals. One thing we talk about is sort of this broad and very vanilla definition of what an incident is when we think about how NIST describes it. And to sort of paraphrase, they talk about an incident is any action that could have a potentially adverse effect on the confidentiality, integrity, or availability of assets, right? Or a system, a network, or its data. And that's a very broad kind of definition. And it's broad on purpose because, if we narrow down the definition to something of just an event, right? An event of interest, right? Maybe an attacker ran malicious code on a web server, right? We could capture that in a single event, right? Whether it be a security 4688 event log, or maybe a sysmon event ID 1, if we're just capturing a process being executed, right? We think about different endpoint kind of forensic artifacts that can also capture that sort of thing. But at that point, we're really forgetting everything that led up to the incident, right? Or that specific event, and everything that led up to the execution stage, or that execution tactic, right? Or anything that involved remote code being executed by the attacker. What about all the reconnaissance activity that probably occurred before that, right? Or what about all of the post-compromise activity that occurred after it, right? The different persistence implants that the attacker might have left, the privilege escalation, the lateral movement that was needed to get to maybe a higher value target, all the different credential access that was needed, right? Once we're in Windows environments, you pretty much need credentials to do anything, and so that's huge, right? The command and control, the exfiltration, and so on, right? So the main idea here is that we want to be thinking of incidents not as just events or events of interest or a single indicator of an attack, right, or compromise, but as an entire attack narrative, right, or an attack chain, including all the actions that led up to and followed the quote unquote incident. And so when you're going through the environment, with all the tools and artifacts that you have available to you, think in terms of an attack narrative, right? We're not hunting for flags. We don't really do that in TCM exams. But your goal is to tell a story of what the adversary did in the environment, and why, right? Who they targeted, what systems or accounts, what did they touch, right? Again, rather than just collecting indicators of compromise. Try to forecast events too, right? That might be able to help you move forward in that attack timeline. Right? The attacker got access to this high value system. Well, they must have gained higher privilege credentials at some point before this, right? Because they weren't an administrative user before, or maybe they're a low level user now, but we know they did this later on, and so we can sort of forecast, some of those tactics or steps or techniques that they might have performed. Maybe they wanted to persist on the system, and so if they did, maybe I should check for X service being installed, right? Or maybe a registry value being set. Or you can reverse indicators or events of interest and move the other way, right? And move back in time, right? It's like, I see this zone identifier telling me that a file was downloaded from a strange URL. Maybe I can pivot over to something like the web proxy logs or the firewall logs or different network connection logs, and maybe see if any other endpoints maybe reached out to that server in the past, kind of as a precursor event. And so pivoting is a huge part of the exam, right? And not even just between different collected data sources like endpoint logs or web logs, but in the artifact sources themselves. And what I mean by that is obviously not going to give away anything, but I can tell you, if you only rely on using the SIM or using Splunk during the exam, if you're only relying on hunting through SIM queries, you'll most likely not get enough points that you need. It's really important to sort of move beyond the dashboard. Because the truth is, real environments can be messy, right? Telemetry might not always be hooked up on every system. In some cases, certain events or pieces of telemetry aren't captured the way that we maybe thought they would or wanted them to be, or certain things are abstracted from the analyst. And so you're given the suspected intrusion data in many different formats, and you're sort of encouraged to use different tools at your disposal to parse through them and hunt for answers. And in doing that, you'll find a lot of tools in the exam environment that you have access to that maybe weren't covered in the course, or maybe ones that you didn't see before. And that's kind of expected. It's not a mistake or anything. I just tried to build out a very broad analyst workstation that could appeal to many different analysts and maybe what their preferred tools or arsenal of utilities are. And so you'll have more than enough that you need to work with. Is it doable with SOC 101 and SOC 201? Are there any other prerequisites? Yep, definitely. Everything you need is in the SOC 201 course for this exam. The only caveat is that before taking the SOC 201, you'll probably want to have some of that prerequisite knowledge, whether it be from the SOC 101 or just having a good core understanding of SOC workflows and tools and analysis. And so you don't have to take the SOC 101, but it is sort of recommended, or to have the equivalent knowledge. And then everything specific to this exam is, sort of built around that SOC 201 course. When do exam results come out? I think usually our timeline is like 2 weeks max, but it's usually sooner than that. If you were in the beta, probably closer to 2 weeks, just because those first set of reports that come in, it sort of takes a bit of time to sort of get our help desk and support team sort of up to speed with sort of grading and whatnot, and coming up with grading rubrics and whatnot. So earlier on, it usually takes a little bit longer. Out of pure curiosity, why choose a dinosaur as the image of SOC 201? I don't know. I think we were kind of ran out of fun animals to use. And then Josh had a good idea with the dinosaurs. I really liked the way it looked. There are a few different versions we had of it. I don't know. I just thought it looked cool. I think eventually we'll probably have a course that uses Velociraptor in it as sort of a instant response tool, and so that will probably be a good another good image to use for that one. But yeah, we have no shortage, I guess, of different designs to use. I don't know, just thought it looked cool. Initially, I wanted to have like an evolution. I think the SOC 101 is sort of that hedgehog, and so I don't really know what would evolve from that, but I don't know. I guess the dinosaur kind of works. Any recommendations on books? The Blue Team Handbook is a pretty good one. I also have, let me see if it's in this room. Here it is. So this is one I'm currently going through. It's called the DFIR, the D for Investigative Mindset, by Brett Shavers. Sorry, let me fix my mic. Specifically, I think the full title is Placing the Suspect Behind the Keyboard, Volume 2. It's really good. It's not like super practical in like a technical sense. It's more so building up, again, an investigative methodology. How do you actually do forensics, right? How do you think about collecting artifacts and preserving artifacts? And so if that's what you're interested in, I would highly recommend anything by Brett Shavers is good as well. In terms of resources at hand, would it include cloud security resources like Sentinel? No, there's no Sentinel in the course or exam. But again, a lot of the same kind of investigative skills and methodology is going to be similar. So the SIM that you have access to in the exam is Splunk. And so that's what we cover in the course as well. And so any of the, sort of the queries that we talk about or sort of build and work through in the course will be pretty applicable to the exam environment. You'll probably just need to change, again, the indexes and whatnot, but all of that's sort of provided. But again, if you come from a different background in terms of like technology stack, you should have a pretty decent time sort of translating that if you go through this sort of SOC 201 course. A lot of it is mostly sort of methodology focused, but however, we do need to use tools every once in a while, and so we try to stick with like open source and free kind of tools to achieve those same results. Does it come with a retake as the other certs? Yes, it does. So any sort of exam or certification you take with TCM comes with a retake, which is always nice to see. I would probably be remiss to also not talk about the Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales that we have going on currently right now. And so this is sort of the biggest and I guess longest sale of the year that we have at TCM. I know it's one that a lot of people look forward to and wait for. And so I encourage you, if you've been sort of waiting to take the course, or if you have an eye on a certification or a bundle or a training, now's probably the best time of year to pull the trigger. You can see, we have 50% off the academy payments or the first academy payments, 20% off TCM certifications, including the PSAP, which we're talking about right now, and also live training. There's also certification and training bundles, which we've released today, a new training bundle for specifically blue team operations or the sort of defense side. So we have the professional defender bundle, which includes the PSAA and SOC 101 course, the PSAP, and also the practical malware and analysis and triage course and certification as well. So some nice links there that are going around in chat, as well as the banner that you can see down there. We also have some more potential releases and events going on in this month, and so just stay tuned. Again, I think next week we'll have some more news for that as well. But definitely check out, if you haven't already, to see what's going on with the Black Friday at TCM. And so, I mean, that's pretty much sort of the high-level stuff I wanted to cover for the exam. definitely we can take a look at chat as well. But there are also, some minor topics that I guess I'll just highlight just as what I think might come in handy during the exam or different sections of the course. And the music's doing that thing again. Let me fix that. Or just different things when it comes to, threat hunting and responding to incidents in general. And the first of which is, having a good understanding and having a diverse understanding of different data or evidence sources, right? And so in the course, we talk a lot about visibility and collection and the importance of collecting high quality data sources in order to actually support threat hunting efforts. And the nice thing is that threat hunting allows us to use a lot of the same data sources that we already have and already should be collecting for, our standard traditional alert detection analysis, right? With the caveat that we're not really focused strictly on alert data, though. More so, having detailed logs and events that might contain evidence of attacks, but aren't, being automatically detected. That's sort of the point of threat hunting here, right? And I like to break down evidence sources that are particularly valuable to collect in separate domains or categories. And so, the reality is some of these sources might be a lot easier to collect. If we're talking about flow data from network endpoints or various security appliances or applications. And some data, like having detailed endpoint forensic data or memory-related evidence, that can be a lot more of an effort to collect remotely and at scale. But being a strong threat hunter really requires us to have a good working understanding of a wide variety of data sources and different capabilities. The more options we have for gathering and analyzing different pieces of evidence, the higher our success rate will be when we want to go out hunting. And so, we talk all about network-based evidence, so different things like flow records, even things like PCAPs, firewall logs, right? We can think about DNS logs, proxy logs, right? If we don't have any kind of, or if we do have, an endpoint proxy server deployed in our environment, a lot of very useful data can be gleaned from proxy logs, right? DNS logs as well, same kind of deal. We talk about endpoint-based evidence, so again, a big one here is operating system logs, right? Having a good understanding of Windows security logs and some of those important event IDs that we cover, system logs as well. And also, when we compare that with different drivers or utilities like Sysmon, right, which really open up the door to some advanced and verbose logging that's almost like a cheat code when it comes to understanding endpoint events. And so, if you do have Sysmon data, or if you have access to it or the ability to deploy it, it can really save you when it comes to especially detecting living off the land techniques for sure. When you think about disk-based evidence too, we might need to acquire and analyze full disk images and perform file system forensics, right? We might need to grab the master file table, for instance. Typically we'll be focused around timestamp kind of data here, right? Sort of the idea of the MACB timestamps are, modified, accessed, changed, sort of the born or created timestamps. And this could be one of those things that's tricky to do at scale, right? Especially when we're talking about collecting full disk images. If you think about how big some of those disk file formats are, right? And so usually if we're concerned with this kind of level of analysis, we're already pretty suspicious about a compromised system or a set of systems, right? And so this is why we have other opportunities to collect triage data, perhaps while a full disk image is being taken, or the logistics are being put in place to actually take a full disk image. Same kind of deal with memory-based evidence too, right? Just another one of those things which can be a little bit hard to manage, but can really help us answer some questions that can only be answered by looking at memory. And then also, of course, this idea of intelligence-based evidence as well. As we'll find, we can't really talk about threat hunting without pairing it with threat intelligence. And so we really do a deep dive on different intelligence-based frameworks. We talk about TTPs, MITRE ATT&CK, different IOCs or IOAs, and different OSINT resources to be able to look up indicators that we come across, perform reputation checks, or get additional context to enrich our investigations. And so, again, I don't just want to dive too much into detail on different slides and whatnot, but I did just want to highlight perhaps some sections of the course that are definitely going to come in handy when it comes to sitting the exam, especially structured threat hunting and the different methodologies around how we can actually take telemetry, or maybe take a threat report or some kind of intelligence that we come across and build up a structured threat hunt around some of those things that we identify. And all that comes with data transformation too, right? So being able to parse through data, being able to dissect threat reports or threat intelligence that were given, perhaps in the rules of engagement, right? Or perhaps, in some of the documentation that we're given when we sit the exam, how can we actually break that down into actionable hunts? And so, again, a very high level here. And also to sort of cap it off, some nice intrusion analysis resources here, which will, if you're looking for, how do I maybe structure one of these reports, or, what are some examples of some good threat intelligence reports or incident response reports? The DFIR report is probably my top recommendation here. But there's also a lot of really good stuff coming out of Palo Alto, specifically Unit 42, Cisco Talos. Again, a ton of different sources here that you can turn to find a ton of great resources. So let's head back over to the chat. Yeah, we'll have to use a guinea pig one of these times. I'm trying to think of what would be a good course for a guinea pig. Why does the music do that every time? A mobile device forensics course would be awesome. I agree. That would take a lot of research and effort to put together, but that would be amazing to have in the academy. What do you think of building a custom SIM using machine learning for mid and small startups? I would sooner use probably an open source SIM, even something like Wazoo or Security Onion, some of the features from that utility set before I maybe build up a custom one. Again, there are a lot of good resources out there for even small startup companies, right? I don't think there's any excuse to not have some kind of centralized telemetry. And again, Wazoo is something I've used before in a medium-sized organization that didn't have any kind of SIM solution or sort of centralized telemetry or logging source before, and it worked well. Do you know if there'll be a roadmap of TCM core certifications by the end of the year for 2026? I'm not sure. I know we have a number of different roadmaps out there for different paths. If you mean like a development roadmap, I'm not sure about that. I don't know if that lives somewhere that I'm just not sure, maybe internally. But again, at this point, I'm not sure exactly the defensive oriented course that I might be putting together next. Probably going to know by the end of the week, or probably have that decided. So I'm not sure how far out, some of that planning might go. But yeah, that's an excellent question. I would like to, if we could publish something like that, just so people know what to expect. I'm wondering whether TCM will have their own CTF kind of thing. I think it will be cool to have some CTF challenges made to enable us to practice for certs. Yeah, great question. I know we are sort of, we support one, or we sort of, what's the word, partner with the CTF once a year. I forget the name of it. My memory's terrible right now. But we will have something exciting probably announced next week. Oh, I'm not sure when exactly, or maybe by the end of the week, but around kind of a CTF type thing. So I would look forward to that. Keep an eye on the TCM socials for that. Andrew Bellini put together something I think is going to be really fun. It's pronounced Wazoo. I don't know. Okay. I used to say was yeah, I think I used to say was and then like I said, we were building out that capability in one of my previous companies, and someone I was working with called it Wazoo, and I wasn't sure. like I was like, maybe I'm wrong, so I just kind of changed to copy how he pronounced it. So now I just say wazoo out of out of I guess that sort of stemmed from that conversation ever since then. Yes, that's what it is. Meta CTF. Yeah. So we sponsor Meta CTF every month, or every month. Yeah. Wazoo was a. It would be really cool to have our own kind of TCM branded CTF though. I know a lot of work goes into that though. Even if, we talked about it before, especially when we had Alex here, because the more people you have, the lot easier it becomes from a, logistics and sort of resource building perspective. It takes some time to actually build machines, especially make them diverse, right? Like Alex would be making sort of web oriented challenges. Bellini could do some really cool, probably programming, IoT related challenges. I would do some blue team challenges, different forensic ones. And so it's nice to have that diversity, but it does take a long time to sort of put those together and QA and test. But maybe one day, if we have ample time, I could probably see us doing an annual one. If we have the whole year to sort of put together a decent list of challenges. All right. I'm not seeing too many more questions come in. And that's pretty much all I had for, I guess, the sort of slides there and talking about the certification itself. If anyone has any questions about, again, the PSAP or the accompanying SOC 201 course, or anything about the Black Fridays, I'm happy to address those before we hop off here. But again, kind of a shorter stream this week to sort of announce the release of certification. And next week we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming. And again, next time I'm back on here, we'll do some more Sherlock challenges, because I've been having a lot of fun with doing those over at Hack the Box, and I think they're really good for streams too. A lot of people like to follow along and sort of go through the investigations along with the stream, which is nice to see. But again, just some final reminders here. We have that defensive bundle that was released today. We do have some other bundles over on the TCM side that we've had for probably in the past year, but this defensive one is kind of a new release for us here, which is really exciting. There's some great deals on those defensive bundles at the moment too. So definitely check out the link going down in chat for those Black Friday deals. Let me pull up that nice slide I put together. Spent some time on it, so I want to make sure it gets used here. So again, that's going to be 50% off the Academy payments, the first Academy payment, 20% off certifications, and live training, as well as those bundles. I'm not really good as a salesperson, but I'm capable of reading from a list here, and these are the nice deals we have here. You can see the nice link you can check out as well. And so with that, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for the questions today. Here's some more. Oh, as I scroll up, I find some more that I missed. After 5 years in blue team, would you recommend trying to move into red teaming? Yeah, I mean, if that's what you want to do, I don't think there's a set level of experience or level of years you need. I do always say it is nice to sort of have, it is always nice to start out in blue team before you sort of expand or even go down more specific paths, because it does just sort of give you such a nice foundation for security operations, which you can take, whether you're going into pen testing or whether you're going down into, more specifically incident response and threat hunting or forensics. Having a nice foundation of sort of that core security operations methodology and skills and triage analysis takes you really far, no matter what direction you're going in. And so if your eventual goal is to move into sort of red teaming, or if you just mean penetration testing, if you have 5 years experience in blue team, that's more than enough. Look at different applications or jobs that you might be interested in, and just see what they're asking for, right? See if there's any certifications that you might be able to study for. or any projects that might look good on a resume, or different tools or utilities, or depend again, it all depends on what they're asking for, and it's usually what I do when it comes to job advertisement. I just look at what's being listed, check off what I have or what I can confidently explain or have experience in, and anything else, do some research, do some OSINT, and try to figure that out. Because once you start seeing patterns in job ads, that's typically what people are going to ask for. You can sort of focus your study efforts or your resources towards picking up a specific tool or technology or whatever it is. What would be a good beginner position for cybersecurity? Good question. You don't really know where to start. Honestly, I would say anything on the blue side. I'm kind of biased, but anything defensive oriented. There's a lot of, I wouldn't say there's a lot of, but there's more, I would say, entry level positions on the blue side than there are perhaps on penetration testing and whatnot. And so a junior SOC analyst would be a perfect position. If you're coming from maybe a bit of a techie, maybe an IT kind of background, and you want to move into security. That's how I started out, as a junior security analyst, worked my way up to being not so junior, but that takes time. It takes over years of experience to gain. And so you'll definitely learn a lot, especially if you're in sort of a smaller or medium-sized company like I was, because you're going to wear so many different hats. Your job role might not make sense sometimes, like the actual title that you have, just because you'll be doing so much more. I was doing a lot of cloud stuff. I was doing a lot of like cloud stuff, application security, vulnerability management, architecture, security architecture. It was crazy. GRC, right? You will wear so many hats if you are a security analyst in a smaller company. And that can be tough. It can be very demanding, but it can also be probably one of the most rewarding things you can do early on in your security career. And so with that, I think we will wrap things up. I'll take this last question here. How hard is the PMRP exam for a security analyst 2? I think if you have that level of experience, you should be okay. Again, take the course. Everything you're going to need is going to be in that course. Matt Keeley's done an excellent job on that course. Personally, one of the coolest courses I think we have in the academy, and I know that he's done an excellent job on that exam environment as well. And so, again, I would take the course, see how comfortable you are with the material, maybe spend some time brushing up before you take the exam. I've heard it can be a little bit of a difficult one. It is sort of in that, it's not a beginner focused exam, especially when we changed the names, we made sure that it was sort of treated as more so an intermediate exam, because it is a little bit tough. But again, it all just depends on how comfortable you are with the course material and the labs in the course. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm going to hop off now. I hope you have an excellent rest of your week, and I will see you the next time I'm on stream. Be sure to check out next week's stream as well. I think Andrew Bellini will be on. Again, we'll be doing some fun stuff there. I'll be in the chat hanging out, and I'll see you for some Sherlocks next time.